Hey everyone, Justin here. Today I'm sharing with you the 3 specific big mistakes that I made on the swim, the bike, and the run, and how you can avoid them on your very first race. This is a really specific video for those of you who have your very first triathlon of the year or in a very long time coming up. It's not going to be a general video with like, oh, I bought the wrong kind of bike, or I didn't eat the right food. This is really specific stuff that I did wrong on my very first triathlon and going forward, so that you don't have to make those mistakes. You can feel super confident and have a kick-ass day. And then at the end, mistakes that I made along the way that are not quite as big that you can avoid as well. Just make your first day a lot more enjoyable, pleasant, and stress-free. If you have any questions along the way, definitely feel free to leave a comment. With that all out of the way, let's go ahead and dive in. The very first mistake is related to the swim, and that was going out way too fast, way too hard, and set myself up for a really bad race where I was essentially recovering from that swim the entire time. If your first triathlon is a pool, you've got a little bit of an advantage here because you're used to swimming in a pool. If your first triathlon is open water like mine was, you don't have the sight lines or the cues that you're used to feeling. It just felt like I wasn't going anywhere, so I was trying to swim faster and faster to try to compensate from that. It turns out I was going basically the fastest I've ever swam in my life, and I was just trying to beat myself and try to get faster and faster because it felt like I was not moving in the water. You are moving in the water, especially for those of you who are doing an open water swim and you don't have a lot of open water practice. Trust that you are moving forward in the water, even if it feels like you're not. Ultimately, at any point, if you feel like maybe I'm going too fast, you're almost certainly going too fast. So slow it down. Allow yourself to relax, breathe, and get into a comfortable pace. No one's out there winning a triathlon because they put down a really fast swim time. So a quick perspective, if your first triathlon is a sprint, that's around 750 meters. Pretty amazing swimmer might be pulling off like a minute 10 per 100. So we're talking about a 9-ish minute swim, whatever. And then a middle or back of the packer adult learner might be 2 minutes 5, 2 minutes 10 seconds per 100. And that comes out to a swim that's about 18 to 20 minutes. So we're only talking an 8 or a 9 minute deficit. It's not worth going into the red and working really hard in the beginning to try to get that extra minute or 2 back. But if you're intimidated and you're doing an open water swim, start yourself physically at the back of the line of triathletes and usually off to the sides as well. And even stand there once the horn goes and give yourself a 10 count. Let everybody get off the beach and get into the water. And 10 seconds is gonna feel like a really long time, but it's nothing in the scheme of the race. And it's gonna let people get ahead of you and clear, so you're not panicked, you're not hitting into people. You can always backstroke, you can do an elemental breaststroke, anything like that to give yourself time to relax, and you'll be good to go once you get on the bike. So speaking of the bike, that leads well into the second mistake that I made, and that is not doing enough training on the bike. It's really easy for beginner triathletes to look at a triathlon and break it down and say, okay, I'm not a good swimmer, I need to learn to swim, and I'm not a good runner, I need to put a lot of time into running, and I can ride a bike, so we'll just put that kind of in the down below pile where I don't put too much time into it. You might go for a few bike rides and you might spend some time on the trainer, but a lot of people don't really put the time into the bike as a beginner as they do on the swim or the run. Not putting enough time into the bike is definitely the biggest mistake that I made on my very first triathlon. One, it's the largest time component of the race, and 2, that really sets you up for the quality of run you have. So some quick math for you. If you're doing a sprint triathlon, that's usually about 12 miles. A cyclist who's got maybe 6 months to a year of bike training and they've put the time into the bike might do that at about 20 miles an hour. That's totally achievable for beginners, anywhere in that 18 to 21 mile an hour range. 12-mile bike ride should go by in about 35. Somebody who's doing that at about 13 to 14 miles an hour, which is kind of a typical pace for an untrained cyclist, that can take about 55 minutes to an hour. So now we're talking about a 20-minute gap between somebody who's trained a little bit on the bike and someone who hasn't trained on the bike. So actually, if you're not really a strong runner, but you want to be competitive in the race, it's easier to take 5-10 minutes off of a 12-mile bike ride than it is to take 10 minutes off of a 5K run. So to go from a 30-minute 5K to a 20-minute 5K can be a lot of work. Or to go from a 27-minute 5K down to a 17-minute 5K can be years and years of work. So a couple of exercises that work really well if you're on a limited time. I definitely suggest going to a spin bike. A spin bike is gonna give you a lot more bang for your buck. You're gonna get a harder workout in that amount of time because you're not coasting. It's a constant workout you know, if you spend 60 minutes on the bike, you're working for 60 minutes. And then work in some structured high intensity elements too. Warm up and then do like 5 1-minute hard efforts with, you know, 2 minutes between, or 5 20-second really hard all out efforts with, you know, 2 minutes recovery, anything like that. That increases your lactate threshold. Ultimately, it means you get a lot more power on the bike. The one thing I would avoid is just trying to bike at a steady pace for your entire workout. Don't just bike for 30 minutes at one intensity. Work some harder efforts with recoveries in there. You're going to be a lot faster of a cyclist. The main limiting factor for your speed on a bike is wind. It's aerodynamics. So getting yourself as low as possible, if you have the curvy drop handlebars, put your hands on those and really try to bend your elbow. Bring your elbows in, get yourself as low and aerodynamic as possible. Biggest thing that I see beginner cyclists do is they always try to push too hard of a gear because it feels like you're going faster. So while you're in training and then during race day, really be sure to gear down so you're spinning your pedals faster. It's gonna feel like there's less resistance. It's gonna put more effort into your cardiovascular system rather than trying to push a really hard amount of force through your muscles. It's generally good to aim for, you know, 90 to 110 RPM if you have a cadence meter. If you don't, that's fine. I would generally say for the majority of beginners, whatever you're doing, try to do it a little bit faster. The majority of beginner cyclists pedal too slowly with too hard of a gear. Spinning down to a lower gear with a higher RPM is gonna save your legs for the run, and it's generally gonna make you faster as well. The third huge mistake that I did on my first triathlon was not doing enough brick workouts. And a brick workout is any workout that's 2 sports done right after another. So that could be a swim workout and then a bike workout. But usually what it means when people talk about it is doing a bike workout and then a run workout. And the reason is, if you have never experienced what that feels like, oh boy, you are in for a surprise. When I was new to triathlon, I thought that if I biked a lot and ran a lot, then on race day, when I was biking less distance than I train at and running less distance that I train at, everything would be perfectly fine. And let me tell you, that is a completely new sensation that is unlike anything you will find not from biking and then running. It's not just that your legs are tired. It's not just that it's hard to run or you're sore. It's like your muscles forget how to walk or forget how to run. You don't want to make it so that the very first time you experience that is on race day. All you really need to do is get into the habit of every so often after you go on a bike ride, say a 45-minute spin session, go for a mile or 2 run. You don't need to, you know, bike for 2 hours and then run for 7 miles or anything crazy like that. Just getting your body used to having been biking for a while, now going for a 10 or 15-minute run is going to do wonders on race day. 2 to 4 weeks out, I might do 2 brick workouts a week. 7 to 14 days out from the race, I might do 1. But getting used to those bricks and getting used to how that feels is going to go a really long way so that on race day, you're totally comfortable, and when you get off the bike, you can have a great run. Been in transition and people put their bike away and they put their running shoes on and they go for a run, and you can tell immediately who trains bricks and who hasn't, because the people who haven't and it's their first triathlon, they're in pain and you can see it. It's gonna be tough, but you'll thank yourself for it on race day. All right, so those are the 3 huge mistakes that I made for the swim, the bike, and the run. I hope they help you out. I do have a couple more little tips that don't quite warrant their full discussion, but are super annoying little mistakes that I've made along the way. So let's go ahead and get into those as well. First thing is, when you rack your bike in transition, when you're getting ready for the race, make sure to figure out where you're putting your bike. I can't tell you the amount of times I've lost my bike when I come out of the swim and I think I know where my bike is and I don't. When you walk into transition, when you're getting ready for the race, you're usually walking in the opposite side of where you actually come in off of the swim. Things are going to be different. You've been swimming for a long time, you're in a hurry, and it's so easy to lose where your bike is. If you get there early enough and the organizers allow it, it's awesome if you can put your bike on the end of the rack closest to the aisle. Just makes it a little bit easier. You always want to count the number of racks that you're in from the perspective of the swim exit. Go to where you're going to come out of the swim. Say I'm 1, 2, 3, 4 racks in, on the right. So easy to lose your bike coming out of the swim. Don't be like me running around the transition area looking for your bike. It sucks. Second little mistake that I have made and I've seen others make, and that is not knowing the rules of the race. So if you're new to triathlon, the rules to triathlon are different than the rules to cycling or a lot of running races or anything like that. Definitely recommend going to the athletes meeting. It's usually the night before the race. Definitely read the rule book. There's a lot of little rules that people wouldn't think about, but they're really important to the safety and the competition of the race. Check the rules, make sure you read the specific rules for the race you're doing. Don't get penalized, don't cause a crash or anything like that. The third mistake that a lot of people make, especially beginners, but really experienced people too, is not either knowing or having the gear to do basic bike maintenance. I have never done a race which I don't see at least one person having a flat, and I have seen times where athletes have been on the side of the road begging for a CO2 cartridge or a patch because they just didn't bring any. Almost certainly someone in the race is going to have a flat tire, so you got to be prepared in case that person is you. Don't get caught on the side of the road either not having gear or not knowing how to use the gear. And the last little tip that I've got here is an awesome technique I've figured out to make sure that I don't leave any gear at home. And that is the night before the race, when you've got all your stuff, put it all out on the floor, organize it by sport, make sure you've got everything. Once you're comfortable, you've got everything on your checklist, you know it's all there, take a photo of it. From there, once you've got that photo, it goes directly into your transition bag. At no point, and this is super important, at no point does anything come out of the bag. If it comes out of the bag, which it doesn't, you're then gonna take another photo of yourself putting it back into the bag. You can pull out your phone, double check if you have a specific thing that you're looking for. It just makes race morning a lot less stressful if you aren't stressing and thinking about, did I pack this or didn't I? I hope that was super helpful. If you have any questions on any of that, feel free to leave a comment down below. And if you have any other tips that work really well for you, feel free to share them down below too, because I want to see what other people are doing. I hope you subscribe if you're interested. There's a ton more of beginner and intermediate triathlon content coming, tips, gear reviews, all that stuff. And you can follow along with me as I do my races this year and going forward. Have a fantastic rest of your day, everybody. Go do some awesome training of your own. See ya.